In 1982, I was very concerned about the number of old buildings disappearing in the town, so I photographed Orpington High Street to create a record. I've gone back at regular intervals ever since to photograph and in 2022 video. So what has changed between 1982 and 2022? How many of these old shops do you remember? In this video, we look at the area from the roundabout at the bottom of Church Hill to the one-way system. We see the High Street's last remaining pub, the White Hart. What happened to the old Anchor and Hope pub and Barclays Bank? The new shopper. And how many of you remember this old building? And then the Allied office. We also have the middle of the Priory Conservation area and several local listed buildings. Make sure you stay to the end to see everything that has changed and also what has not. Some is really surprising. Please subscribe to get updates as I release them. Brought to you by Eclectic Experience. Change seen through images. The White Hart pub we see here in 2022 was built in 1913. It actually replaced a previous pub that was set a bit further back. It is a locally listed building and is the only remaining pub in the High Street in 2022 after the Harvest Moon closed down. Here we see the pub as it changes through the years. Notice it has changed its signage quite a few times. Looking in 1982, there are some interesting items. Look at the signage. Focusing on the brewer, it was then an Ind Coupe pub. Also check out the canopies and at the front the red phone box. By 1992, the brewer had changed to Taylor Walker, if we look at the sign on the top left. The canopies and signage has also been updated, and the phone box had been replaced. In 1997, it was still a Taylor Walker pub, but the signage was now green. By 2007, there had been another change in signage to what we see today, as we see in 2012 and 2017. By 2022, it was covered in scaffolding following a fire in November 2021. Fortunately, no one was injured, but there was quite a lot of damage. The next two buildings, number 102 and 104, are the same as the White Hart in that they are locally listed by Bromley Council. For information, the Bromley Council website says that local listing does not give the building any formal protection, but the council encourages their retention and expects all proposals for alterations or extensions to be sympathetic to the building's architectural character. For most of the survey, these buildings were occupied by Save the Children and Gallery 102, but by 2017 there were new tenants, and again in 2022. Looking at the 1982 picture from the other end of this block, we see a tyre shop, Checkpoint Tyres, a type of retailer which is now normally found out of town. A couple of points to note. Look at the very old style credit card signs on the corner of the shop, saying Access and Barclaycard Visa. Notice as well the road sign for Moorfield Road. It looks very old in 1982. Well, as a sign of its durability, it is actually still there in 2022 if we take a look. Next door to the tyre shop in 1982 is an estate agent called Furlongs with very 1970s font, which I think says it was established in 1812. Well, it didn't actually survive until 1997. Also, another curiosity is that as well as being an estate agent, it was also a branch office for the Woolwich Building Society. The building was taken over by the new shopper, then One Stop, and by 2022 it is the Orpington IT Centre. Going back by one unit again, in 1982 there is what looks like a jeweller's, Cliff Hughes, and there is still a jeweller's there in 2022, Ruth Brushett, though the shop front is very different. Here are the changes of this little parade over the years. The grand looking building on the edge of Moorfield Road in 1982 was occupied by the new shopper, which later moved to the previous parade of shops before going to Petts Wood. Whilst looking through the years, this is another locally listed building. Interestingly, on the London Borough of Bromley website defining the conservation area, the building is described as a bank, which makes sense that it once was, looking at the very grand front door, which has not changed during the 40 years of the survey. It has been occupied by a kebab shop for many years. The best kebab, yay. The building next door is also locally listed. And another curiosity. If you look carefully above a window, you can see a name and then architect and surveyor. It was there in 2007 and is still there in 2022 if you want to take a look. It looks very old and may even be contemporary with the original building. Moving on to the junction with Chislehurst Road, which was once the main road in and out of Orpington, we come to a little parade of shops, and the first one gave me a shock, as it was actually a furs shop in 1982. By 1992 it was a cleaners. I didn't photograph the whole parade of shops until 1997, but then it was a very interesting mix. A photographic shop, a mirror shop, a car garage, a typewriter shop, an actual garage, and then John's Hair again, a long-term constant on the high street. I remember going here as a child for a haircut. It's been in business since 1964, so must be one of the oldest businesses still running on the high street. As we finish running through the years, another point to note is the units next to John's Hair again were knocked together to form a large restaurant. Across the road there are in 2022 retirement flats, but in my first photo taken in 1982 there was in fact Allied Carpets offices. However, if we go further back in time, there were some old cottages that were built in 1690 and survived until the 1970s when they were demolished. By 2012 the old Allied offices were surrounded by hoardings about to be knocked down, and by 2017 we can see the last for sale signs for the new apartments. Coming back on the other side of the road, this is the view in 2022. The first building is a standalone semi-detached property. Here it is through the years. Next door was an old shop I remember for standing out by looking old. Pike's Aquatics. Here it is in 1982. Unfortunately it was boarded up by 1992 and in 1997, but in 2002 construction was well underway for the replacement building, which is seen here in 2012. In 1982 this interesting building was occupied by Les Says Shoes, who was still there in 1992, but by 1997 Pat's Textiles, another long-term Orpington retailer, had moved in and is still there in 2022, celebrating being in business since 1970 as we see it over the years. The site of this building, vacant in 2022, has a long history. In 1982 the Anchor and Hope pub was here, but the building sits on the site of a much older pub, also called the Anchor and Hope, and it was still here until 1928. It is rumoured that Queen Elizabeth I stabled her horses here when she visited Orpington. Unlike the White Hart, the Anchor and Hope pub did not survive. It was empty in 2007, but by 2012 had been taken over by a restaurant, Reku Zen. They had different signage again in 2017, but the building was empty by 2022. The next three buildings are quite individual. In 1982, they were John Humphrey's Turf Accountants, Pat's Textiles before they moved, and Georgina's. 10 years on, only Georgina's has changed to Leather Fashions, but this looks like it is closed. This building is also a locally listed one. Over the years, there's been a fair turnover of tenants, as we can see as we move through the images. On one unit, after John Humphrey's, Cor occupied the site before it became vacant, Then Ambassador minicabs and taxis took over, before the site again became empty in 2022. The last block up to the roundabout has had varied tenants and is very different to 1982. For many years there was a baker's in the end unit, and we can see the old Hovis sign that hung high up on the wall and was still there in 2012, but had gone by 2017. The next unit along had several different tenants over the period of the survey. This building was empty in 2022, but back in 1982 it had actually been Barclays Bank. Then it was an amusement centre in 1992, before becoming Pizza Express by 1997. I assume Barclays moved up to the site it is currently on, at the bottom of Homefield Rise. Pizza Express was here for a long time, as we can see by the logo changes over the years. Also, as a point of note, I understand that in the very distant past, this is the site where the town stocks and gallows were. There has been so much change. Only 2 new buildings, the replacement of Pikes Aquatics and the replacement of Allied Carpets building. Every shopfront has changed, though some long-term businesses have been here throughout the 40 years. John's Hair again and Pat's Textiles. As before, I have highlighted only some of the changes. There are many more. If you've enjoyed this video, at the end there is a playlist from my other high street ones. Please take a look and press the like button. I intend to make more similar videos, so please subscribe to the channel, click the alerts bell and add comments, especially with any additional information. Thank you for watching Eclectic Experience. Change seen through images.